its way to yes with the United States anytime soon. Let's keep in mind it's not only that their senior leadership considers present tariff levels a joke, and I use that word literally, but also because such a big component of the negotiations that are happening right now between the United States and over 100 other economies. It's not just about their tariffs, it's not just about market access, it's also about aligning strategy in a decoupling with China. So the Chinese are not okay with that, right? So that is not fixable in my view. It's also not fixable because this is not something that Trump and Xi can do by themselves. You actually need a very strong team that is aligned that can execute on what such a deal would look like. And this team cannot do that, not with the Chinese. With Japanese, sure. You know, with the Mexicans and Canadians, sure. Not with the Chinese. So I think I think it is inconceivable that we can get back to the status quo ante U.S.-China relationship pre-Liberation Day under this administration. Inconceivable. Treat the Russians and Ukrainians in the same way. The Russians are responsible singularly for the actual invasion, and Trump has not acted that way. But I also recognize that Trump's willingness to use real pressure on the Ukrainians when he cut off, suspended intelligence and defense aid, did make the Ukrainians take him seriously, not just on the critical minerals deal, but also in accepting a ceasefire without conditions, which Biden could have done and did not. I give Trump full marks for that. But he has not been willing to use any of that pressure on Putin, and Putin has responded, as one might expect, by refusing to engage meaningfully on a ceasefire. So you're right that this morning we saw Trump post that he was unhappy with Putin killing a bunch of civilians in Kiev. Fair enough. I am also unhappy with that. I think that where we are heading right now, the most likely path, is that Trump is unwilling to put sufficient pressure on the Russians to get them to yes. He's unwilling to blame the Russians singularly for it falling apart and him not being able to get the deal that he has promised as a pretty high priority for well over a year now. And as a consequence, he walks away from both countries, which means no more U.S. aid for the Ukrainians, and it also means no rapprochement with Russia. That's where I think we are heading right now, and there are very significant geopolitical and economic implications that stem from that.
What happens?
Are doing a lot more, right? And walking away is very different from Trump calling Putin for 90 minutes, not telling the Europeans, and doing a deal with Russia over their heads. So it is not the worst possible scenario. It is one where Trump will feel like, look, this is a European problem. Europeans are going to have to solve it. I tried. They're both idiots. I'm not going to do it. In the near term, Europe will provide an awful lot of support for Ukraine. And will that support be adequate to allow the Ukrainians to continue to defend their front lines? That is a very important question. Will the Europeans be able to stand up security guarantees that will deter the Russians from going after all of Ukraine and from removing this Zelensky administration, which continues to be an active priority of Putin? That is an open question. Will the EU be able to hold together in support of Ukraine when they are not acting in contradiction to the Americans, but they're doing it almost completely by themselves?